Sorry, I'm throwing a new question at you. So, but
Had was I knew who I wanted to write about. I knew I wanted to write about someone that I could personally relate to on more levels than most characters I see in media. That I've never really seen a character where I was like, that's
that's
me,
me. That's me.
like.
My little intro thing, and then I guess we will get started.
Okay.
Greetings, Skullgateers. I'm Chris Van Dyke, president of Skullgate Media and editor-in-chief of our flagship anthology series, Tales from the Year Between. Welcome to the first episode of Coffee at the Skullgate, an interview series where I sit down and talk with one of our writers whose work has appeared in our books. Today, I'm thrilled to be talking to Allison N. I picked Allison to kick these interviews off because she's one of the first writers I ever met on Twitter. I call her my original beta bestie. We met in Twitter groups for writing prep for Pitch Wars in the summer of 2019, and we traded manuscripts. She read my draft of my book Dragon's Curse, and I read her book Legends of Annun, the Godstones, book one of the Sylex Meadowbrooke Chronicles. So when I started looking for writers for the first volume of Tales from the Year Between, I was super happy that Allison wanted to join. She's had two stories in that book, as well as the story in volume 2, Under New Suns, that just came out last Sunday. And I just checked, it is sitting at number 8 right now in the best new sci-fi anthologies. So I'm excited about that. So she's also acted as a guest editor for that book. And so after nearly 2 years of working, collaborating online, I'm very happy to have the time to sit down and get to know Allison a little better. So Allison, hello, welcome.
Hello.
So just if you could introduce yourself a little, just outside of writing, who are you? What do you do? What's life?
Well, I'm really just kind of boring. No, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I actually just recently moved to Minnesota from Oklahoma. I was born in Oklahoma, and I moved up here for my husband's work. And we've been up here for, I want to say, 4 years or so, something like that. I actually lost track of time. I'm not sure about that, but
especially since the last year and a half have all been outside of
yes,
time.
yes, the last year has been just a.
Where are you? Who are you? What's going on? All right, so I know that. So writing, you've been part of both volumes of Tales from the Year Between. Just tell me a little more about the pieces that you wrote for those books. Like what went into them. What did you write? Maybe tell me about Achten Tan first, and we can talk about Under New Suns.
Well, in Achten Tan, I wrote the two short stories, "The Sore" and "Requiem of Blood." And yes, there was a lot of death and destruction in Achten Tan. So I thought it would be nice to have a little free-spirited fun with it. So that one was, and of course, whenever we were building the city, and there were the giant ribs, I immediately knew somebody's going to have to jump off of one of those, and not I just knew that I had to have that happen.
So how do you jump off and make it light? Right, they're not.
Yes. And then for Requiem of Blood, it was a chance for me to show the other side of the story, because there was a lot of stories about um, the town of Achten Tan, but there weren't a lot of stories taking place outside, especially the elves. And I've always been fascinated. I've always loved elves, and I always like to show the other side of the conflict, so to speak. And Aslan was a perfect way to do that, and I loved the idea of showing her in a sort of difficult situation of she's trying to do what's best for her people, because she's not really a bad person, so to speak.
Right.
She's just doing what she thinks is best for her people.
Good. Yeah, I like that because I mean, in one of my least favorite things in fantasy tropes is just sort of the orcs. Whatever that is, just that you'd have this entire group of people that would like live in a cave forever and never eat food, and they don't leave; they just protect treasure. So you're having what in that had sort of developed into like the bad others, the elves from that town. I'm getting the chance to sort of see inside of them, and whether chopping off a bunch of people's heads is a good thing to do or not. Right? There's a motivation behind there. They're like a people in a society.
Exactly. As her prisoner states, she's not a cold-hearted bitch. She is a leader. She has to make tough decisions, and it's not always fun. It's not always pretty, but it's life.
Good, yeah, and I love the contrast between the two. You did have one short, like really sweet, light, almost like the little YA romance story, and then you've got this rather sort of dark but complex look at a character who's very violent, but not just doing it because she likes blood. No matter what the title of the story is, Requiem of Blood, great title too, by the way. All right, so then under New Suns, you also sort of had a dark piece there with Kevin Rinner. You want to say a little about that story?
It actually took me a long time to decide what to write for this volume. I was a little bit distracted by other things. I was working on revising a couple of my other works, so I was a little bit scatterbrained during this whole thing. And of course, as also while this pandemic was still going on, and it took me a long time to choose him. But when I realized what I could do with him, I kind of just had this aha like moment, and where I was like, I gotta write from his perspective. I just had to do it.
I think Horton.
Arc, yes, Arc
Horton,
Horton.
Audrey. Yeah.
She did a few stories that sort of collaborated with, and it was really fun to see our stories combine together and work together to expose who Kevin Renner really was. And I just had a lot of fun with it.
Like I said, both for the Aslan and Kevin, it seemed like your sort of motivation was to take a complex character and sort of get inside of them. Is that something that you do with a lot of your writing? Or is that sort of a...
I do. I enjoy the complex characters because, I mean, well, nobody is one-sided. There's always two sides to every coin, so to speak. And I love the idea of, just because you see someone and you might have a perceived expectation about someone, but you never know what's going on in the background. You never know what's happening in their life or what's happened in the past that has made them who they are. And that's always kind of fascinated me to explore those angles of more than meets the eye to a person.
Yeah. So that's sort of thinking of other things. So apart from Skullgate, you've written two of our anthologies. What other writing are you doing? What are your other projects that you're working on?
Yes. Like you mentioned before, I have been querying the Legends of Annun, the Godstones, and that's the first book of the Sylex Meadowbrooke Chronicles. I've actually been querying that for a little while now, and I'm working on doing another round of revisions for it. I actually just recently finished the first draft of the second book for that duology. I'm planning on continuing to just query the first book for a while and see if anything comes from it. I finished the backstory to one of the characters that is in Sylex Meadowbrooke, the assassin, Jakiran Blackshield. I think you might have read a little bit of that one.
Yeah, I started that.
That's another dark one.
Yeah, I was going to say another dark character. We're sort of seeing another side, a complex side of another killer.
Yeah, he is very complex. Yes, but with Sylex, funny enough, the Godstones started off as I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I didn't have a plot for Godstones. All I had was I knew who I wanted to write about. I knew I wanted to write about someone that I could personally relate to on more levels than most characters I see in media. That I've never really seen a character where I was like, that's me. Like that. My first attempt at a novel was actually inspired by the role play game. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, Terra.
I've heard of it.
Yes, it's a online role play game, and I was inspired to write a story based off of sort of the same concepts that were in the video game, because funny enough, I never finished the game, so I actually made up my own ending by writing this book. But nothing ever came of it. And then I started the Godstones novels, and that's really the first serious novel that I've worked on. So yeah. Earlier, Lex, I call her Lex for short. That's her nickname, Sylex. She's definitely me. She's more me, exploring a lot of my own personal issues. A lot of writers say that they explore their own, they explore themselves. And like Lex, I was kind of sheltered when I was growing up, and when you get out in the real world, it's
Yeah,
overwhelming. It's really confusing, and I wanted to write her going through sort of a similar situation, and so yes, it was definitely very personal, more of a personal thing when I was writing
yeah,
for Sylex, and the other ones, I mean, they're also a part of me, but they're not
right,
really as personal to
right,
me.
yeah.
So,
And someone on Twitter had asked one of those, sort of writer questions, like, "Have you ever taken your own attributes for your main characters?" I'm like, every main character I've ever written has something in me. Like, some of them are pretty much direct analogs of me, but even I know you read my love songs for Neo Tokyo. Like, the main character is a teenage lesbian, but she's pretty much me. Other than the fact that we've done some gender swapping and things, but that's my taste in music. Um, so, do you generally write like sci-fi fantasy? Do you ever write outside of that, or is that just sort of your jam?
I've dabbled a little bit. Like I tried a little bit of horror. I did a horror short story that I didn't really do anything with that. And well, like you said, I like to explore the darker themes, and horror definitely has
Yeah,
dark themes in it. So, but no, I've definitely been concentrating more on the science fiction and fantasy aspects, and I think that while I was working on it, I actually started it with no intentions of publishing it. It was, uh, and I started it. I want to say it's been through. I want to say it was when I first moved up here, so it's been 3 or 4 years
mhm,
that I actually. It's been a while since I first started writing it, and it was but it was something that I never really thought I was ever going to share with anyone. But then I ended up sharing it with a friend, and she was like, "You're actually a really good writer. Like you should,
nice.
like, you should really pursue this." And that was the moment I went, "Huh, maybe I should," because I never really considered author to be a
Right.
path that I could pursue. Nobody in my family has really done it. Nobody I know has
Because
written
there's always
books.
the fantasies. We'd all love to be the next, best-selling fantasy author. But what are you, other than trying to publish this? Are you, I guess, do you have any? I'm just sort of rambling. Do you have any sort of goals where you're like, this is what I want to do? Is it more just this is what I'm going to do? More just I'm going to keep writing and see where it goes. This is fun. Um,
Probably mostly the latter. It's I would like you said, I would love for it to take off. I would love for my books to be, mentioned in media and everybody, fawning over them. Every author would love that. But I would just be happy for my books to just reach people, any people. It doesn't really matter who or how many, honestly. Is I just think if it helps, if it connects to one person, I think that's enough for me. And I would definitely love to be traditionally published for my novels eventually. But if I never get to that point, I don't think I'll necessarily be, uh, heartbroken over that fact, as long as my someone somewhere has seen my work
yeah.
and read my work and enjoys it.
Um, what speaking of writing, what writers have inspired you throughout your life, either in terms of how you want to write or just how you learn to read?
Well, it's funny because unlike a lot of writers, I wasn't actually a huge reader when I was younger. Reading was fun for me, but I wasn't the girl that always had her nose in the book. I was the nerd in the corner with her. um,
Weren't we all?
I was in the nerd in the corner playing World of Warcraft. Like I was saying, I didn't really read a lot whenever I was a kid, but I think one of the books that I read a lot of when I was younger were actually the called Hank the Cowdog books. I don't know if you've ever heard of
I don't
them.
think I've ever heard of Hank the Cowdog. I'll have
It's
to
it's
Google that.
it's a really funny story told from a dog's point of view,
Huh.
a dog that works on a ranch, and it's just it's a very it's a, they're very fun stories, and most of the stories are about that dog protecting his family and protecting from real and imaginary any coyotes
Right.
or something that he thinks is real but really it turns out to be nothing. And I think I got a lot of my humor from those books because
Nice.
they're very humorous. And then moving on to the high school era, I actually read a lot of Tom Clancy books,
Okay. Yeah. I went
which
through a
is
Tom
funny
Clancy
because
phase
I
in high
don't.
school.
Yeah, I loved the thrillers in high school. So, but like I said, I still even in high school, I didn't really read a lot, but those were more the kind of books that I was into at that time. And now I've definitely graduated into reading more of what I actually write, which is the fantasy and the science fiction.
Wrap Move towards wrapping up. I also just like to ask people what guess what's making you happy this week. My favorite podcast always end with endorsements of some sort. It can be writing, TV, video games, takeout food. What's something that you've been doing the last week or two? You're like, this is something I can recommend. Um,
Well, let's see here. I guess for the last probably the two last week or so, me and my husband have been binge watching the James Bond films.
okay, nice.
I've always
Like
loved James Bond. He's awesome.
going back to all the
Um,
classics and working your way. Are you watching them in
oh
order?
yes, we
Oh,
have the
nice.
entire box set of all the, and we just watched all of them, including the new the new ones,
Wow.
all in a row. That was
How
just
many?
bam, bam, right.
All right. So before we wrap up, can you tell people where can people find you online if they want to check you out? I know you got a website and you're on
Mhm.
Twitter.
Yes, my website is just authorallisonmoore.com. On Twitter, it's at moorewriting89. And then you can also, I do have a Goodreads page,
Okay.
an author Goodreads page. Yeah, if you just search for Allison N Moore, it should pop up. You
Okay.
will have to put in the N, my middle initial, because if you don't, it'll pull up a different author. So,
All right. I'm gonna put links for all that below the video, so anyone
okay.
who's watching this can see that in the links or in the podcast notes. Yeah, and you can find Allison's stories in both Achten Tan, Land of Dust and Bone, and Under New Suns, which are on sale now. You can get them at those and all of Skullgate's other books directly from our store. We have a website, www.skullgatemedia.com. You can also find them at Smashwords, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, or support your local bookstore and ask them to order our books for you. And if you are a writer, we are currently gearing up to do volume 3 of Tales from the Year Between. Again, that's where we had Allison for 2 books in a row. So if you'd like to join us in creating a new world, there's an application guideline at yearbetween.com. We're also opening up for new submissions for more standard anthology, and we're looking for winter-themed speculative fiction. Anything from horror to fables to magical realism, as long as it has a winter bent, we're interested in seeing it. You can read all about that at skullgatemedia.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and our podcast of the same name, Sounds from the Year Between, and wherever you find your audio fiction. Don't miss out on our updates and content. You can sign up for our newsletter or follow us on Twitter at skullgatemedia.com. And then that, I will see you in 2 weeks when I'll be interviewing another author. Bye, Allison. It was great to see you.
Thank you.